Welcome to the BXG Podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet.
You think it's just going to be barbecue sauce?
Because if you actually read those books, it's just gobbledygook.
I really think clothes should be mandatory.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Captain America.
trailer reaction video.
Good.
So we'll move on to Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery, and we're going to do this very casty, because if you haven't seen this and you want to, this is something that, given the nature of it, with a lot of twists and turns, it's very detective-y, that sort of thing. We do not want to spoil this, right?
Yeah, right.
So we're going to do, in the tradition of kind of, like I said, more of a, can't get my mic to stand on here correctly. It's gonna fall, whatever. In the tradition of more spoiler cast type fare, what we'll do here is we'll break things up. We will do spoiler free thoughts on the film, and then after we get that out of the way, we'll dive into a little bit more of the spoilers. But I will say, just up front, you should watch this. Even if you haven't seen the first one, I think that this is fine to dive into. But it's definitely, I speak for myself, and I would say that I would recommend this, and I feel like I could speak for Greg as well, and say that he would also recommend this. Is that fair?
I will just on that end of things.
I'm okay. Yep, there we go.
Okay. On that end of things, we watched it for the second time. Our second time, Janie and I's second time, with Janie's parents for their first time, and her dad, I don't know if her mom had seen Knives Out, but her dad had never seen Knives Out. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh, do I need to see it?" And we're like, "No, you don't need to see it." No. I mean, it helps in a sense just because they're both great. I will, like on that, like they're both very watchable, very enjoyable. But he loved it. I mean, on that end. So so I think that's like a good endorsement and things like that, where he never saw it, didn't really know anything about it. He liked, Agatha Christie books and movies based off of those things, which is what this kind of, gets into. But it's definitely a recommend. And if you haven't seen it, I mean, like, I don't know what you're doing. I mean, if you're super busy, I get that. I mean, not all of us have the time off that I've been awarded. But if you do have 2 hours and 17 minutes, fit it in.
And I'll be honest with you, that is probably my only real complaint, is that this was a little bit too long, and really the first 45 minutes to an hour kind of dragged. But after a key event in the middle of the film where things kind of stop and recalibrate, after that was when things really picked up for me. And I don't remember if that's how the first one also, because I've only seen the first one once, but I don't remember if that's how that film functioned as well.
It did. Basically, we watched the first one again, just to kind of read it. It does basically the same idea, because honestly, those kind of murder mystery, the books and those movies actually kind of do the same thing, where the first 45 minutes are sort of set up and like, oh, here's all this stuff. And then the major event happens.
Sure.
And that's basically just so you kind of see who everybody is. It's that wide ranging thing. So I can understand if you thought it was too long. I mean, I like that. I'm not what's funny is I like murder mystery books. Okay. But when you're reading them, sometimes that setup is almost too much when reading something. And so in a movie where it takes 45 minutes, it may be long for a movie, but it's not 2 hours or 3 hours of reading something. And it's like, oh, plot. But I could see that as something. I personally didn't mind the 2 hours plus of it. I will say that for someone that usually is like something was too long. I think there's two main things on the reason why is this cast was very likable, in the sense that they were also very unlikable except for Daniel Craig, and Janelle Monáe. And I think that's the idea too. Obviously, they're supposed to be unlikable people until they're likable. And I know they're going to have a third one of these.
And he said Ryan Johnson's already writing it.
Yeah, he's alreys writing it. I mean, Daniel Craig's like been fully on board from the first one too. I mean, Benoit Blanc, like I said, we're not spoiling anything on this end. Truly one of the great, just out of nowhere characters. Not a real character from any book. This is truly like a great character that's developed over the past 3 years. And he's, to me, just a perfect character. That overdoneness with the Southern accent, Southern fried, Kentucky fried, Foghorn Leghorn, as Chris Evans calls him in the first movie. There's something about that. Like, I know some people are like, oh, it's a little overdone, but that's the idea. If you've watched if you've watched any murder mystery, everyone's always over the top. It's always that, oh my gosh, like.
Sure, yeah.
And it's Kate Hudson screaming in this movie is that perfect rendition. The lights go out, she screams, and she screams all the time, and that's part of it too. So for me, it's one of those movies where it hits all those tropes that you're supposed to hit when doing something like this, but then also elevates it to another level. And that's what I really like. I know a lot of people are like, it's better than the first one. I don't know if it's better because it's also way different. It's a different whodunit. And it's a family instead of, a group of friends. And it's, a family that also doesn't like each other, but at least they're family. There's that connection. This is just a group of people connected by money. And, it's different on that. But it's I've watched it twice in 5 days, 6 days or something like that. And I liked it. I liked it more the second time. Honestly, it's like, I wouldn't mind watching this at least another time, over the next week, because I just like it that much.
So I think a couple things on that is, as far as this standing alone, I know another thing that Ryan Johnson had said was he was disappointed that Netflix included in the title a Knives Out mystery.
Yeah.
Because he really, and I think that, and you highlighted it, this stands on his own. Like, there's one character, and it's kind of almost in a way like Holmesian, where it's always going to be Sherlock, but it's not going to be the same, nemesis every time, the same. I mean, obviously we know with Sherlock Holmes that he does have the nemesis of Moriarty, but he's not always going after Moriarty. And Minecraft might show up, and Watson's always there, but it's a different case every time, and every case is different from the last. And so I do think that I would agree with Ryan Johnson on this, in that I kind of wish they would have left that out so that it could stand on its own and not be. But this is like the culture we're in right now, where everything has to be serialized. And so I feel like that is why that kind of got shoehorned in there. The other thing that I would say is this feels like what the Murder on the Orient Express and then Murder on the Nile should be, but are not.
Right.
And I think that is, as much as anything, a credit to Daniel Craig. Hang on one second. I think it's a credit to Daniel Craig because he is so strong in this character, in the detective, in the murder movies, the Murder on the Orient. Kenneth Branagh plays Hercule Poirot, I believe is his name. Death on the Nile, sorry, not Murder on the Nile. But it's just not as strong of a character, and I feel like you need that in a movie like this, in a story like this, a murder mystery story, you need your detective to be this sort of outlandish. Sherlock Holmes is outlandish. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the BBC series starring Benedict Cumberbatch, which is my favorite Sherlock Holmes iteration. He says all the time, I'm a high functioning sociopath. And he's got this sort of like, he's annoying, he's crass, he's pretentious, but he's also the smartest guy in the room. And
Right.
I think that you need that. I think you need your detective to be like that. And so, like I said, my only complaint was that it was a little bit too long in my eyes, and that the first, like I said, 45 minutes to an hour were a little slow. But I also feel like, and my sister-in-law had said this, was that when you watch it back, there are things you pick up on.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't necessarily
100%.
in the first time, and maybe like a second viewing would be more additive and make that first 45 to an hour a little bit more, I don't even want to say palatable, but a little bit more almost like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's doing that
Oh,
whole
it's
thing.
definitely that. Yeah. The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where he's pointing.
Right.
After, I'm glad that's, your sister-in-law said that, is that's what I felt that's all I was looking for those first 45 minutes. So the second viewing was quicker than the first viewing because I'm like, oh, I gotta see these little things. And I was like, and to me, I also thought to myself, I knew I still missed some things.
Yeah.
Because you're looking for, and then it's like, so I like, after we finish this, after midnight, New Year's Eve, stopped to watch the ball drop and then continued the movie. It was like, oh, I know I missed some stuff and I didn't mind. Like, I was like, that's a thing. So I guess it's probably time to jump into spoilers at this point.
Yeah.
Fully.
Spoilers. Watch this.
I mean,
sorry.
The thing, I mean, I guess it doesn't really start, but I mean, like, the real premise is that Miles Braun, played by Edward Norton, invites all his friends, which includes Dave Bautista, Catherine Hahn, Janelle Monáe, Kate Hudson. I think that's everybody.
Leslie Odom.
Oh, Leslie Odom Jr.
Mm-hmm.
So he invites them because they're all part of this group of people that came up with this idea at this bar. And what's funny to me and what I love about it is we don't really know what this idea is ever, which I love.
Right.
Because
clean energy.
I love
that's
clean energy, which is all we know. And a lot of people are like, which tech billionaire is this making fun of? It's all of them.
Yeah.
It's literally all of them. There's the thing where he's wearing the sweater, like we've referenced before, is that Steve Jobs, and or the turtleneck, whatever you and I think it's kind of making fun of everyone. He has the car, it's just all these things. And I think that's really funny. And also that they all think he's brilliant. And then the idea is that was actually Janelle Monáe's character, which is she plays her sister and herself, Helen.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to say it, like that thing. Cassandra and Helen. And that we don't know initially that Cassandra, who we see initially as she's being introduced,
feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, feel like there was a reference towards her having a sister early.
We did know she had a sister. What I mean is we didn't know it was Helen.
Well, okay. So let me clarify. Maybe this is what I'm thinking of. Is I knew that she was both because I looked at the IMDb page and it showed her.
Oh, see, that would be a problem. Yeah, that would be a
two
problem.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for that.
Sure.
Like to be revealed in some way or another.
Yeah, you don't.
Because everybody else I knew, and I was like, I don't know her super well. I need to see what else she's been in.
Yeah.
And I didn't know her name, so I went to the Glass Onion page and I was like, oh, she plays two people, huh? Oh.
The thing I will also say about Janelle Monáe, great actress. She puts out some serious bangers musically, like really talented musician. Honestly, like very, very talented musician. I was getting that later, but since you're like, you didn't know her that well, she honestly has like some great dance songs. So And she's a great actress. I mean, she should be nominated for this. Anytime I feel like you play two people and you do it well, like she did, it changes accents. I think she should be nominated. I think this movie should be nominated too. But
the first one was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And I also think Daniel Craig should be, because there's this idea of like all the things. But anyhow, so we find out that Cassandra actually was killed, and that it's her sister that's there after this elaborate box thing that Detective Benoit Blanc makes fun of, and I just love this character. So the idea of going to this island was to solve Miles Braun, Edward Norton's murder mystery. He was going to be murdered, in quotes, and they were going to solve it. And Benoit Blanc just blows it out of the water almost
solves
immediately,
it in 30 seconds. Yeah,
which is hilarious. I mean, when it happened the first time, it's like, just talking about this movie, this is how much I loved it. We've had two movies that were just so enjoyable. There's a difference between good and enjoyable. Top Gun and this, where it's just like, I want to watch Glass Onion again. It's just that kind of talking about, because it was just so fun. I find it
offensive that you always fail to include the Batman in this.
Batman's not enjoyable. It's a good movie.
Yes, it is.
It's a great movie. I don't know if it's enjoyable. It's very dark and sad, and I enjoyed it, but it's a different kind of enjoyable. I've watched Batman 3 times. I've watched it more than Top Gun and Glass Onion.
It's enjoyable.
I paid money to see it. I got paid money to see Glass Onion. I wish I would have.
You pay.
Yeah, but that's different. That's different. Yeah. But I wish I did see it in the theater with like a lot of people. I think would have been fun. So we find out all this, and then there's this realization that Benoit Blanc puts into Miles Braun's head that maybe they're trying to kill him. And this is where everything kind of evolves or devolves, however you want to look at it. And that's where we get into the actual, like, what the real plot of this movie is.
I thought that this was an interestingly constructed narrative. I do think that at any time that you are involved in this genre where there's like murder mystery, quote unquote, the whole like twin body double thing is going to come up. If you put out enough pieces in a franchise, it's going to come up eventually. And so like I kind of, that aspect of it I kind of thought was a little bit weak, but I think that what made up for it was how ridiculous this club of people, the Disruptors, was, because
what does that even mean?
Because they're all morons. I mean, like, even, Leslie Odom's character was like a scientist or whatever, but they're all idiots. They're like Kate Hudson's character, moron, big time. Dave Bautista's character. I mean, he's played by Dave Bautista. What else do I have to say? And then even when Benoit solves the mystery at the end and lays it all out, the reason he's able to lay it out is because you're so dumb. Basically, you are so idiotic.
No, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. And he used his thing, which is so funny. Like, the lights go out and you shoot a gun. Like,
and it was I like the little, and it almost, they use it in promo. I know they use it in the trailers, but it's almost like a throwaway line where he said, I'm bad at dumb things, and Clue, the board game Clue, is dumb, just running around rooms trying to.
Yes.
And it's basically what it ends up being. Like, it's an allegory for that almost, and it's just, I like that. I like that. That's what he kind of hit on there. Is it's just so dumb, and that's what. And this obviously more so than like Sherlock Holmes or the Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, whatever, there is more of a comedic slant to these films than there are some of those other things. But I think a lot of that again has to do with Daniel Craig's character, but and how he plays him. But yeah, I mean, the twists, you don't necessarily see them coming, and there's little bits of breadcrumbs along the way that you can pick up on if you're really, really observant, that are going to show you things. Because I'll be honest with you, when we got to the point where, and again, we're in spoilers, when we got to the point where she got shot on like the big steps or whatever, in my head, I thought of three people. I thought, this is one of three people. Okay. It's either Kate Hudson's assistant, Peg, I think.
Peg. Yeah.
Peg. It's either Peg, Whiskey, or just the guy on drugs that's just running around.
That guy was just great and still never mattered, which was so great.
Right.
I thought they throw him in as like, oh, maybe he matters. Nope.
Well, it's like maybe like and I think that some of those things were red herrings to an extent, but that's who my suspect list was
sure,
like stoner dude, Peg, Whiskey. And then you kind of like, when they're going back and showing and Whiskey like gets very upset at Dave Bautista's death and fires a harpoon gun at
is that a harpoon gun?
At Helen. She's off the list. But I just always felt like, Peg was like cleaning up after Birdie to the point where it was, she had the motive to want to pull this off. And so that's where I was at. Almost felt like Edward Norton was too obvious. You know what I mean?
And that's the idea, is like, he is too obvious, and then so he has to be, but you go away from it.
Right. Well, and I think that was even
that's what makes it so brilliant.
That was the extent too with Chris Evans' character in the original.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, recommend all the way.
Oh my God.
Maybe
my biggest recommendation of the year. Honestly, I because it's a movie I think that anyone can watch.
We're in a new year, so
okay.
That's not saying a
movie
lot.
that came out in 2022.
Not mine. I would still recommend probably the Batman and the Weird Al movie over this.
The only reason I would say is I don't know, like the Batman movie's not necessarily for everyone.
Should be.
It should be. I'm
people who it's not for are wrong.
The Weird Al movie, I would just say it's hard to find. Like, you do have to go out of your way. This is on Netflix,
fair.
And use someone's account as you can until they suspend it. I still think that's
Allegedly.
a trope. They're trying to. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
because they still want people's money. But yeah, my rating. I mean, we didn't do Knives Out on the pod.
No,
I love Knives Out.
That was before
That was right before. Yeah. I love this movie. I'm gonna give it a 9.5. Like, I absolutely love this movie. I think it should be nominated for everything it can be. I literally believe Best Picture, Daniel Craig, Janelle Monáe. I mean, I just thought it just hit everything. It was so good.
I think that I will give it an 8.5.
Okay.
I'll give it an 8.5.
Okay.
I think your enthusiasm actually talked me up 0.5. Because I was just going to say 8.
Sure. I mean,
but
it's one of those things where, like, I went into it where I knew I'd like it.
Yeah, sure.
But then it just shot up. It was kind of that idea of Top Gun where I knew I liked Top Gun. And then it just ascended like a fighter jet. Batman, honestly, I don't think Batman's rating would have changed if we're going back on that. I thought that movie was going to be great, and it literally was just like, this was as great as I wanted it to be, and all those things. So sometimes it's good to meet expectations. Your expectations are super, super high.
Well, it makes me think of Thor, where there was no way that they could hit the expectations.
No, right, exactly.
No way with Thor Ragnarok that they, or Love and Thunder, that they were going to hit those expectations.
No.
Not a chance. And I think that is sometimes maybe the hard part of success. But I would say that this, to me personally, Glass Onion was better than the original. because the original I liked fine. I just didn't think that it was what everyone said it was. I thought it was a good movie. And to me, I thought the original was good. And I think that this one is good to great.
This is the one the one thing is I saw Knives Out in theaters.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the guy in the room, seeing a movie in theaters does matter for stuff like this. It doesn't matter for like the super indie films. It literally it doesn't. Sure. It doesn't matter. But for stuff like this, I regret. I honestly like that's probably my biggest like movie regret of the year is not seeing this in theaters. I should have. I don't know why I did.
I don't know if this was available for me anywhere because I know it was a fairly
it was a couple
relief.
theaters, but it was just one of those things where it's just like, I was busy with school, all that stuff. I should have just the next Knives Out. I don't care.
Yeah.
The next, what they should say, a Benoit Blanc film.
Yeah, I almost feel like that would make more sense.
That's what it should be, and that wouldn't surprise me.
Or I would almost even do something like Sherlock Holmes, where the novels or the stories, whether short story or whatever, where it's like Sherlock Holmes and the Hounds of Baskerville, Sherlock Holmes and almost like Benoit Blanc in Glass, something like that. But like I said, it's everything serialization, everything, you have to have name recognition or whatever. But no, like I said, I really enjoyed it. And I do think that people should see this. You don't have to see the first one to see this and for it to make sense. Each story kind of stands on their own, and it's very good. Definitely.
Very good.
So we will move on to our next affair.